second round of action here from the Magic Online Championship. Hello and welcome to coverage of the Magic Online Championship. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Luis Scott Vargas, and we're ready for the second round of action here. We've got Peter Yev versus Sam Black in Legacy. So what are we looking at here as far as matchups go,
Well,
Luis?
first of all, we're looking at Sam taking a notebook and he's a blank piece of paper and he's starting to subdivide it. And you know what I think he's doing is he's getting ready. Yes, probably that too. He's getting ready to count Storm, Mana, and all the other lines of play, because Sam's playing Ad Nauseam Tendrils. This is one of those decks that we talked about in the much heralded LSV's Keys segment.
Really?
I'm just going with what I hear.
Who heralded it?
And what Sam is doing is trying to assemble the combination of Dark Ritual, Infernal Tutor, Lion's Eye Diamond, Past in Flames, Ad Nauseam, all these different spells that either tutor for cards, get you more spells, get you more mana, and then Past in Flames lets you replay all of it and end with a gigantic Tendrils.
And this is kind of the archetypical Storm deck for Legacy, right? This is
one of the headline decks in Legacy, yeah. And actually,
but I mean for Storm, like this is for people that like to play these combo Storm decks,
right? This is also I think the most prevalent version of Storm.
Yeah.
It's actually kind of funny. Sam ended up getting a lot of input on his list from Rodrigo Torres, Togares, who is a well-known Legacy Storm player and Vintage player who I actually met in Madrid because I played his deck for a video on Channel Fireball. And then went in the comments. He's like, I think you sideboarded and played wrong on all these different parts. And it was awesome to talk to him about it because he was right. And I love hearing good constructive feedback. And he offered a lot of it. So
and he's a specialist for this build.
Oh, most certainly.
Yeah.
And then I talked to him before this event, when Sam was trying to figure out what exactly he wanted to play. So I thought that was really cool.
Now on the other side, we've got Peter Ye, who's playing Grixis Delver. And you can take a look at some of the cards on the top of your screen there that highlight this. And in fact, outside of Mana, he's got a lot of the headliners here. You see Young Pyromancer and a Delver of Secrets there. And
Legacy staple Gurmag Angler. We're going to get the cards in hand maybe a little resized because it's cutting off the top there. But it's Gurmag Angler is it's kind of the Tarmogoyf approximation for the black deck because it's like a Tarmogoyf and in that it's a 5/5, and in this deck it frequently costs 1 mana. So the Grixis Delver deck, this is definitely the aggressive deck in this matchup. It's trying to pressure Sam's life total and just use its Force of Will and Daze and also Cabal Therapy to stop Sam from assembling his combo. And Sam,
I think he's trying to assemble the combo in his head right now. If you take a look
Sam
at the
has
lower
a
left
turn
side,
1 kill here.
And he's just making sure. Is that what's happening, or is he asking himself, "What if my opponent has Force of Will? Can I still kill here? What happens?" Because you can see that it's been on Sam this whole time, but he's just been planning out what his turn's going to be and what it looks like.
Unfortunately for Sam, he has to go for it. It's a turn 1 kill, but the Force of Will from Peter is going to stop it. So Sam is going to be able to play all his Cabal Rituals. They're each net +1 mana before Threshold because they add 3 mana, and if you have Threshold, they add 5 mana, all black.
So is this Peter Ye going, oh, sweet, he's going for it here,
Oh, yeah.
and then once Ad Nauseam goes on the stack, he just snaps it off? Or
yeah,
what?
Peter kept a hand that actually is very marginal, except for the fact that it is a Force of Will. It's preventing the turn 1 kill. So Ad Nauseam will let Sam flip cards off the top of his deck, losing life equals to their cost for each, until he wants to stop. And that, at 20 life, frequently ends up with a kill. So Peter is going to Force of Will it. Peter can't cast any spells except Gitaxian Probe right now. He's got a colorless mana source only, but he kept a hand with Force of Will and it stopped a potential turn 1 kill.
Wow, that is just insane. So now Sam Black is left with 1 land that probably won't stick around for super long and a Dark Petition in hand. Wow.
Yeah, that's one of the risks of playing the Ad Nauseam Tendrils deck is that, look, if Sam was playing against, say, someone like Magnus Lanto playing lands, Sam would have just won the game on turn 1. But playing against a deck with Force of Will, sometimes you just have to cast all your cards and hope they don't have the Force of Will.
Now, what's the incentive? I heard you say, look, Sam has a turn 1 kill. He just has to go for it. Why is that? What's the rush?
Well, the rush is that Sam's hand didn't have a way to really develop past that. So some of Sam's opening hands are going to have cards like Ponder and Brainstorm, which let him develop his, sculpt his hand, hit land drops, maybe find a card like Duress or Cabal Therapy to protect himself. And if that hand was like that, even if he had a turn 1 kill, he might not use it. He might try to set up a turn 1 Ponder, turn 2 Duress plus kill. Sam's opening hand was a turn 1 kill on the play, and if he went for it, it didn't work out, but it was still a turn 1 kill on the play with no real hope of developing besides just the 1 card you draw per turn. So
Gotcha.
I think Sam definitely should have gone for it, definitely should have kept the hand, and it's just unfortunate that his opponent had a Force of Will in his opening 7.
All right. So Peter has taken down the only mana source from Sam Black with that Wasteland, and now followed up with Gurmag Angler, and that is going to be a very quick clock, just 4 short turns, and as you can see, Sam Black, no permanents on board at all.
And because of that Lightning Bolt, which Peter cast to increase his graveyard size for the Angler, Sam actually cuts a turn off his clock if he uses Gitaxian Probe. But in this case, the addition of Young Pyromancer and Deathrite Shaman to the board mean that Sam is dead in like 2 turns, and unless he draws, I guess.
Is there anything?
Well, because he has Dark Ritual and an Infernal Tutor now, there's a slim chance that he could, between Gitaxian Probe and those cards, find a land and a Lion's Eye Diamond.
Okay.
And then go land, Dark Ritual, Lion's Eye Diamond, Infernal Tutor, sack Lion's Eye, and then he'll have 4 mana floating, which is not quite enough to go off from there.
I see. Pair of Brainstorms in hand for Peter, and a formidable board state, to say the least.
And that's not even mentioning the fact that between those Brainstorms, Peter could find, what exactly what he did, another Force of Will.
Another Force. Okay.
So I think Peter...
This one's in the books.
Well, he's actually got a couple options here, because Cabal Therapy is that black card in his hand, which is very, very effective. Peter gets to name a card, and then if that card, then look at Sam's hand, and if that card is in Sam's hand, he discards all copies of it, which will then triggers Young Pyromancer and makes a token. And it has flashback, sacrifice a creature, so you can then sacrifice the token to cast another Cabal Therapy. And the second one is frequently not going to miss, because you saw that their opening hands. So now Sam is forced to Gitaxian Probe here, and hope that he draws a black source, which I think, given that he just drew a Volcanic Island, this is more just, let's just see what's in my opponent's hand, and then, I can realistically assemble a kill.
Yeah. Drew one of his worst cards there, Tendrils of Agony, and that's going to do it. So Peter is going to win game 1. Sam Black, like you said, found himself in a position where he needed to go for it on turn 1, but high risk, high reward when it comes to making those type of plays, and in this time it didn't work out for him, as Peter did have the Force of Will and the blue spell in hand. So that's going to bring us to our sideboards. Anything jumping out to you, Luis, about the matchup in general? Storm deck, I always find it interesting how they sideboard, because, isn't most of the deck kind of locked in? I don't usually consider the Storm deck a very flexible, deck post board.
It's not. There are some board plans that involve a greater overhaul, and they're actually somewhat counterintuitive. They're like against Miracles, for example, and there is a Miracles player in the field. Sam's plan is going to be to side up to a bunch of copies of Tendrils of Agony and just choose to draw first, and then just accumulate enough spells to go spell, Tendrils.
Really?
Yeah, it's a very interesting board plan. But
wow. Because that can ignore counter spells, basically.
Right, it can, and then you have Abrupt Decays to kill Counterbalance. But against a deck like Delver, Delver is one of the tougher matchups for Storm. The reason you don't want to play against Delver is it has the exact 2 things you don't want to see, which is a fast clock plus a lot of disruption, especially the Cabal Therapy version of Delver. So Sam does have cards like Xanadu Swarm. This is the 1-green 0/1 that when it attacks, your opponent can't cast spells this turn. That's very effective against counterspells. It's less effective against Cabal Therapy, and it's not effective if they have a Lightning Bolt, which the Delver decks frequently just keep in their deck to increase their
They'll
clock.
often just keep them in.
Because if you look, at Peter Diaz's sideboard, he doesn't have a ton that he wants to bring in, like Surgical Extraction and Pyroblast and Cabal Therapy are about it. So he's looking to trim cards like Forked Bolts and potentially even some number of Gurmag Angler, versus Lightning Bolt. Like which fast clocks do you want? Deathrite Shaman's also an interesting card.
Should also point out here, Luis, that as you can see, the players are consulting what look like deck lists, and those are in fact deck lists. So the players were given the deck list for the other players in the competition here starting in round 2.
Peter is reading Lion's Eye Diamond to make sure that he's aware of its functionality, which
it's a weird card.
I mean, that's a smart thing to do. Like if you see a card in your opponent's deck list and you don't immediately know exactly how it works, you should go read it.
Yeah,
I think part of him reading it was to verify that you cannot, in fact, Pithing Needle Lion's Eye Diamond because it is a mana ability.
Right.
So
interesting.
I would expect Sam to not overboard here. There just, like you said, aren't very many cards he can or wants to change. And he's just going to add maybe a little bit more disruption for Peter's counterspells, whether that's Xanostorm or Flusterstorm. That's about it. Maybe Empty the Warrens because that's a traditionally good anti-blue card. But Sam just has to hope for a Duress plus a fast kill, which is kind of your game plan normally, but it certainly is the sort of thing he has to rely on.
Okay, it looks like players are just underway here in the second game.
And you see,
and
actually...
what are you looking at on the openers here, Luis?
One thing that sticks out to me is that Peter Yeh boarded in Engineered Explosives.
By the way, here's a Duress.
Which is a way to fight Empty the Warrens.
Ah, sure.
And Sam kept a disruption-heavy hand. See, this is not like his first hand. This has Duress plus Cabal Therapy plus 5 mana sources.
So it has 2 mana spells and then 2 disruption spells, but no payoffs.
No payoff yet, but this is still a solid hand because if Sam is one, Infernal Tutor or bigger spell like that away from having a potentially explosive start, because he's got Cabal Ritual plus Lotus Petal to start things, and then Lion's Eye Diamond, which it's a tricky card to use. So Lion's Eye Diamond adds 3 mana of any color when you sacrifice it, but you have to discard your hand. And it turns out a fixed Black Lotus is still a Black Lotus because the trick is to either cast Infernal Tutor and sacrifice Lion's Eye Diamond in response, or cast even something like Brainstorm and sacrifice Lion's Eye if you know what your top cards are. You've set them up with a previous Brainstorm. This is going to be a little dangerous for Sam in that Peter just drew a Daze, which is the only unknown card in his hand. Though if Peter casts Gitaxian Probe, it'll be joined by a second. And Daze is a very powerful card when your opponent does not know about it. Sam also got to see the Engineered Explosives, which would make him hesitate to play Lotus Petal or Lion's Eye Diamond.
Oh, he's actually just going to run out the Engineered Explosives on 0 right away.
And the reason that Peter would do that is because he's afraid of Sam casting another hand disruption spell, taking the Engineered Explosives, and then maybe playing like an Empty the Warrens. That is the prime reason to have explosives in hand.
Okay, Brainstorm off the top for Sam Black. He's got the Underground Sea in his hand as well.
And here I wonder if Peter is going to Daze it. It looks like he's not. He's going to let Cabal Therapy resolve. But Sam's now going to see the Daze.
It's going to lose a lot of value once he knows about it.
It is. And Sam did name Young Pyromancer, which is what I would expect here, because that stops Peter from pressuring Sam's life total. Sam now is, he's not really worried about, surviving the next couple turns, though. There's actually, it's funny, there aren't very many formats where you would do this, but this is a case where I think it's potentially reasonable for Sam to not play a land this turn. In fact, he's not going to.
So what's the reasoning?
He doesn't want his Underground Sea to get wastelanded, and he's not casting Brainstorm yet because he saw the Daze, so he wants to wait to cast Brainstorm with his Swamp untapped.
Awesome.
So missing your second land drop on purpose,
sweet. This is just and it being 100% correct. It's so cool. All right, so both players are going to have nearly full information about each other's hands now after Gitaxian Probe and Cabal Therapy.
Right. Peter's going to have 2 unknowns, the Force of Will, which another relevant card he drew this turn, plus whatever he draws off Probe, and then Sam, whatever he draws on his draw step. So what's going to be interesting is if Peter sees this hand, then Sam next turn goes Underground Sea, cast Brainstorm. Does Peter Force of Will the Brainstorm? That's an aggressive play, and Peter has no follow-up, so I imagine he would lean against, but it is something you'd want to consider. Brainstorm has 3 new cards, and Sam has a ton of mana. Oh, wow. Tendrils is very interesting because against blue decks, where a lot of spells go on the stack, you could sometimes Tendrils without fully comboing off. Like imagine, if Sam cast these 5 spells in his hand and the Force of Will got cast, that's already a Tendrils for 12, depending on the ordering.
Wow.
And if Brainstorm finds some more rituals, this could get even better. So this is I think why Sam's just doing nothing. Now
he just wants to build up to a big turn where he casts a whole bunch of things, maybe gets one of them countered, and then goes for Tendrils.
Exactly. He's just going to wait, and hope to draw just more rituals.
Oh.
The second Brainstorm actually could change it.
Well,
looks like it doesn't.
Got a Lotus Petal, though, too.
And Peter's just drawing land after land, so he's just not doing anything either. Sam wants to set it up that he just puts 5 of his own spells in the stack, and then Peter puts like 2 of his own spells, and hopefully Sam brainstorms into like a 6th spell, and then goes tendrils for 18. Currently, this plan is not going poorly. Sam's drawn 2 cheap spells in a row. So now Sam has to decide: does he want to? Yeah, it looks like he's going to go for it. So if he plays first, you're going to start with Lotus Petal because you're not worried about it getting dazed. Then you can go Underground Sea and Cabal Therapy you, or you can just straight up Cabal Therapy. Oh, he's playing Lotus Petal in order to not discard. I think at this point, Sam might have wanted to start firing off Brainstorms because those also find spells, even though you're giving up a spell. Because by playing the Lotus Petal, he's reducing the number of spells he has available on the same turn.
So are you getting the vibe that Sam is not content with the idea that he could basically empty his hand tendrils but not kill Peter? Like he wants to try to set up a
tendrils to be
guarantee,
lethal.
like the absolute lethal here, because it does seem like he's waiting longer. Does he have multiple copies of tendrils?
Well, he's got 1 in the main deck. He may have sided in up to more,
Okay.
depending on what his board plan is here. And the thing is, Sam can't get Peter down to like 4 and expect that to do anything because Sam has no way to close the last couple points.
Right.
So Peter found a Ponder and then ended up pondering into a Deathrite Shaman, which is reasonable, but not a huge
Wow,
thing.
another cheap spell.
So
Is this it? Is that the green light?
I think so. The fact is you get to see your opponent's hand, and then Sam is going to be able to string together Cabal Therapy and Brainstorm. Even if he doesn't tendrils this turn, he's going to be able to set it up so that he can win on the next turn fairly easily. Depending on what his Brainstorms hits. He, of course, could just hit all mana.
Sure.
But if he hits all mana spells, then tendrils also works.
Yes.
So Sam's got a lot of outs to win this turn. And if he doesn't win this turn, he's got a decent chance of winning on the next turn.
Now, he did find a polluted delta. Is that going to give him a reason to wait one more turn here since it's relatively safe from the wasteland? He's squandering the 1 storm count that he's garnered here.
It is. That's always what you have to balance, looking at the storm count. And I think a decent inclination would be you can sacrifice polluted delta to get a basic island. So it is, in fact, protected from wasteland. And then cast Brainstorm, or you could lead by casting Cabal Therapy, which would potentially prompt a response. Looks like Sam is still content just to keep passing the turn. He feels like he's not under any pressure, so he just figures that, increasing the number of cards he has in hand and hitting his land drops, because now he played that delta because it's safe, and then next turn he can play Underground Sea, just gives him a better start towards tendrilsing his opponent out.
Yeah, another spell slot in his hand potentially. Yeah, and he actually hit it too.
Oh, Rain of Filth is a very important card. So what Rain of Filth does, it's a 1 black, and it means that until end of turn, all your lands have the activated ability of sacrifice, add 1 black to your mana pool. So
that's sweet.
So this is essentially a Dark Ritual this turn because it makes all your lands sacrifice for 1. Though, if Sam plays Underground Sea, then casts Rain of Filth, Peter can Wasteland Underground Sea in response, preventing 1 of that mana. So again, Sam is all these turns he's very close to being able to string together the tendrils. And the risk to waiting here, by the way, is that Peter's got now 3 copies of Cabal Therapy in his deck. And it's pretty disastrous if he draws Cabal Therapy, because he knows enough of Sam's hand that he can hit the first time, and then he can flash it back by sacking Deathrite to clear out the second most threatening card. At this point, Peter has enough mana that he can hard cast Force of Will and still cast Daze by returning a land, or actually, if he really wants to, he can cast Daze by tapping 2 mana. But that means that 1 Cabal Therapy is not going to be enough to completely clear out Disruption, though it will take the Force of Will and leave Daze, which is something Sam can presumably play about.
I mean, is it even a bad thing for Sam if Peter hard casts both of these counterspells? Can he actually fully disrupt Sam? Because if he can't, then it's just 2 more spells, right?
It depends what Sam does, and Sam is currently on 3 cards in his graveyard, so he also could be looking to get Cabal Ritual up to 7, which Polluted Delta and Lotus Petal make it 5, Therapy, Brainstorm make it 7, Rain of Filth puts a ton of cards in the graveyard, so looks like Sam's going to kick things off with a Brainstorm at the very least.
All right. Now, what we're seeing here, does this mean that Sam is now going for it for sure, or is this still him setting up?
He's still hedging here, though. This has to be very close. He's got a second Ritual and a second Lion's Eye Diamond now. So Sam can put back let's see. So he's cast 1 spell so far. So he's got 18 damage worth of spells if he puts back both his lands and resolves all of his spells. But putting back both lands is a little bit dangerous. I think that one way Sam could approach this is he could put back Tropical Island and one of his black spells, cast Cabal Therapy to see what how the coast, if the coast is clear, and then cast Brainstorm, and then that will let him go off this turn.
Okay.
Because
He can
even
find-
if Peter plays 0 spells this turn, Sam is going to be able to cast a Tendrils for 18 if all of these spells, resolve without disruption. And the Cabal Therapy does a good job of making that a little safer.
Looks like Sam's going to opt to put a Lion's Eye Diamond and an Underground Sea back on top. At least that's what he's considering right now.
Yeah, it looks like he's counting and recounting. So by putting a spell back, then that means that he does have to resolve the Brainstorm this turn in order to have lethal. He could, he could continue on this path, put back a Brainstorm and then just wait an additional turn. But I think that the waiting some amount of time definitely good, because there's no you don't want to go off where you're disrupted by 1 spell, but you do end up in a spot where a drawn Cabal Therapy is really, really devastating.
Now, is there anything with that Deathrite Shaman sitting there? I see there's a young Pyromancer in the graveyard. If Sam gets to exactly 18 and Peter's able to just gain 2 life
Well, Peter would have to sacrifice one of his fetch lands to go to 16.
Right.
Then the gains 2 go to 18.
to get a tropical or something?
To get a Tropical Island. So
does he have them?
He does have a
Okay.
Tropical Island.
All right.
All right,
So that doesn't work.
No.
All right. So this is it.
This is Sam going for it.
All right.
Depending on what he sees, depending on what happens here, because he is going to be able to name Force of Will here if he so chooses. He knows about the days.
He does. He did name Force of Will.
All right, so he named Force of Will. So Sam actually does get stopped by days here
Really?
because he can sack Lotus Petal for black, but because he has Tropical Island instead of Underground Sea in play, he's not able to add an. So if he sacks Lotus Petal for black and casts Dark Ritual, and then Peter dazes it, Sam has to pay for it, and then he's unable to. Oh, well, then he's actually going to be able to. He doesn't need the Brainstorm because he has the Tendrils in hand. So Sam has 2 spells, 7. The days would be the 8th spell. So actually, he does get to win through days here. It just means he can't cast Brainstorm,
Okay.
but that's still enough because he casts Dark Ritual.
So
Peter-
he cracks a petal.
For 3 black.
Yeah.
Or for 1 black.
For 1 black.
Cast Dark Ritual, 0 black floating. Peter casts Daze if he chooses. If he does cast Daze, you tap Tropical Island and you pay for the Daze. Dark Ritual resolves, you have 3 mana. Then Cabal Ritual and Rain of Filth resolve. You have a ton of mana. You play Lion's Eye Diamond and you cast Tendrils for exactly 8 copies total. Or 9 copies total, rather. Because you've cast 5 spells plus the Cabal Ritual and the Cabal Therapy and the Brainstorm is 7 spells. The Daze would be the 8th spell. If Peter doesn't counter it, then you're able to.
Then you have the Brainstorm.
Then you Brainstorm as the last spell.
Okay.
Looks like Sam is going to Brainstorm first.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so he's hoping now that Peter dazes this, because if Peter doesn't daze this, then Sam can't cast Dark Ritual into the daze.
Wow.
And Sam did already play a land here.
So if Peter just says, sure, this resolves, Sam's already played his land. If he cracks the petal for Dark Ritual, then it gets dazed. So he can't do that. So this is actually just a super key. It's resolving.
Yeah, this is tough.
Oh, is this backfired on Sam?
Going for it this turn is not going to work out well into days, and he knows about the days. So Peter did a good job of not biting on the Brainstorm, and Sam had enough spells without casting Brainstorm first that had he led on Dark Ritual, I think that would have worked out a little bit better. Sam still has a pretty reasonable setup for next turn here, because he's going to be able to string a bunch of spells together and Tendrils and Empty the Warrens, but there's an Engineered Explosives in play, which is going to stop Empty the Warrens. So now Sam actually he's got a pretty tough decision, because I suspect Peter would not let a Dark Ritual resolve here. If Dark Ritual, or Rain of Filth for that matter, if either of those spells get cast, he's going to daze them.
And Sam just can't take that risk, right? He knows the daze is there. I mean, it's just going to happen. So he just has
knows
to
the
pass
daze is
here,
there.
right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, and that's what he's done. So this did not work out for Sam, but he's not out of it. In the meantime, though, the same thing has been true, for most of this game, which is that Peter just doesn't have much of a clock going on Sam Black. Sam's at 15, but that's mostly self-inflicted. All right, young Pyromancer, that's some business. He would have liked to have seen that a little earlier, but so it goes.
Young Pyromancer is a solid draw here. It combines to put Sam under a little bit of pressure because Sam is in the same spot where he's got a lot of spells, but this time he knows his next 2 draw steps. It's going to be Lion's Eye Diamond and Empty the Warrens. And so Sam is pretty far away from having a lethal Tendrils.
Wow, that's quite a turn this game has taken here. Peter up a game over Sam Black, who had a turn 1 kill on the play in game 1, assuming that there was no disruption. But unfortunately for Sam, there was disruption from Peter in the form of Force of Will, and Sam was left with nothing. So instead...
So this could potentially be good for Sam here because Peter cracked the engineered explosives to kill the Lotus Petal. So Sam doesn't have red mana, but he does have an Empty the Warrens on the top of his deck. So if he's able to draw a red source at some point, he's now free to cast a pretty big Empty the Warrens, and he's got a couple turns with which to do so. Unfortunately, even though Lion's Eye Diamond produces red, it's unable to pay for Empty the Warrens. You can't actually. You have to jump through a few hoops to get the Lion's Eye Diamond mana.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like fixed Black Lotus, still a Black Lotus, but still kind of not a Black Lotus too. It definitely makes you work for it.
So we see Deathrite Shaman getting to work there in second days. Not super relevant against Sam's current hand, but it depends on how Sam orders his spells. Because right now, Sam can go Dark Ritual, it gets dazed, and then pay for it, then go off. Though, of course, we know Sam's drawing Empty the Warrens. We know that this turn he's not going to be able to go off. He's under a pretty quick clock here, then.
Now he is. I mean, this has been a pretty bad draw from Peter's perspective, right? I mean, he's drawn a ton of lands here. He hasn't really done it a lot, but he's got a clock now.
He does. He's drawn in total like 2 Force of Wills and 2 Dazes and a bunch of cantrips that ultimately didn't do much and a ton of land.
Another land off the top.
Peter's playing one of the most land light decks in the format. But it turns out that Sam has drawn a lot more mana than he has actual spells that draw him cards. So this is the first turn where you really are looking for that.
So what does Sam want to see here? He finds a Dark Ritual. What is it? What's his dream draw?
He wanted to draw a blue card that drew him into another card, both because that's what you always want to draw in games of Magic,
yeah,
and because he actually wants to up the storm count. Because right now Sam can deal 16, but because Peter's already fetched out that Tropical Island, and because there's still a young Pyromancer in their graveyard, Peter's essentially at 17. And Sam can right now Tendrils for 16.
Now, does Peter have to consider that, though? Like, does he need to start gaining life? Because he's been, dinging Sam with the Deathrite to increase the clock.
Well, there's just the one Pyromancer, so...
That's the only card in the graveyard?
Yeah, it's a non-renewable resource.
Gotcha.
So Sam can potentially live another turn. He gets Deathrite down to 5, Pyromancer attacks down to 3, then Deathrite puts Sam down to 1. I think waiting another turn is going to be his best chance to win the game, even though it's, you clearly know there's a lot of cards which then kill you.
So Sam is going to play a Lion's Eye Diamond here, just, I suppose, to not have to discard.
Well, otherwise he would have to discard,
yeah,
yes.
So might as well.
Yeah, and this is a point where I think being patient again is worth it. Sam also has the ability, if he wants to mini Tendrils, to cast a couple spells, then Tendrils to buy a couple draw steps, and in order to then cast an Empty the Warrens. But an Empty the Warrens for 6 isn't going to close out the game. Even Empty the Warrens for 8 is probably not going to, because that young Pyromancer makes so many tokens. So Sam, again, in one of those difficult turns where it feels very risky to pass the turn here. You're essentially passing the turn and putting yourself to 1. If Peter has any card he can play end of turn, then you lose because of the young Pyromancer. But I think that if Sam empties his hand to Tendrils, Peter down, it's just not going to work. You can Tendrils for 14 here, and that's just not going to do it because he still can't actually cast the Empty the Warrens.
No red mana. Petal in the yard.
Yeah, and the Engineered Explosives did take care of that Lotus Petal,
Yeah.
which I do think is actually better for Sam overall. Looks like Sam is going to go for a Tendrils here. You would not play the second Lion's Eye Diamond unless that were your plan. So what's really dangerous for Peter is, and he's shown good restraint so far, if Peter casts both those dazes, then Sam actually has a lethal
Then
Tendrils.
he's dead.
This is the funny spot where you want your opponent to cast spells in order to fuel your Tendrils.
So let's just say that Peter just hits F6, right? That's the button that just says I yield. You do whatever you want for the turn. Sam goes off. He does his thing.
He Tendrils his Peter down to 1.
Down to
Sam
1.
Sam goes to 21, but Sam has no cards in
And
hand.
then Sam is completely empty on cards, and we see the board state as it sits now.
Correct.
Huh.
And it's possible.
It's a long way to go.
Yeah, it's possible that Peter at that point could. Oh wow, he's casting a daze.
Uh-oh.
This is good for Sam. This is one of his. Well,
Oh.
I mean, Sam got really happy for a second there. All right, so he's casting a daze, returning on. So this is key because now there's an extra spell on the stack. So now Sam will be able to cast 7 spells. Peter cast 1. That's 8 spells total, 16 life. Put Peter to -1, but then he gains 2 off of the death right. So Sam paid for daze. Peter did not cast the second daze. So now Sam is going to Dark Ritual or cast Rain of Filth, one of his 1-mana spells, and hope that Peter ends up casting a second daze here.
You can see the storm count is 3 on the Tendrils. It'll keep track of it down there. Also on the empty. Unfortunately, I can't actually zoom in on cards in hand. I'll try to get them when they hit the stack or in the battlefield. But the hand is actually a camera that we have, or a screen capture of the player's actual screen, not the one that I'm using here.
Right, so Marshall could zoom in on cards in hand, but doesn't want to.
Cannot. I would if I could.
So the second daze, I think we might have a game 3 here.
Wow, really?
Pretty incredible. But if you daze the Lion's Eye Diamond, there's a decent chance you're thinking about dazing this Dark Ritual, and it looks like it's going to happen. There we go.
Oh, he did it. So is this just Sam feeling a lot of relief? Now there's still 2 unknown cards in hand from Sam's perspective, right? Like I don't think he knows about those
one
two,
because
right?
one unknown because the Underground Sea got returned to pay for the first daze.
Of course, right. So the Misty Rainforest is the only unknown card.
So, yeah, Sam got dazed, and maybe he's a little confused about what the last card is, but I think he's going to be really happy at the end of this because Cabal Ritual, Rain of Filth, Tendrils of Agony, and that's going to be lethal.
All right. Well, here we go. You said it. He's going to make a bunch of mana, and so far he's got a ton.
And Tendrils of Agony, storm count of
Is 8.
8, so that 9 copies total puts Peter
Dang.
to -3.
Wow, what a game was insane, right? Sam had an opening to go for the kill, didn't. Then fast forward 5 turns later, he's down to
hoping that
4.
Peter plays spells,
Right.
and then is able to string together a kill through that.
Oh, man. And Sam Black wins game 2.
Wow.
And he's going to be happy with himself for that one. And Peter's going to have to look back and think, oh, what could I have done differently? Tough one there. But we'll get a game 3. So this is we're not done yet.
Yeah, and I think to be really clear to those watching, these are hard games to play.
Very hard.
Look, we see all the hands. It's a lot easier from our perspective. The players have unknown information. Every turn they're dealing with the bulk of the game state being held in the opponent's hand.
Yes.
Looking at the board, I mean, this is one of the things that differentiates Legacy from something like Standard. Looking at the board doesn't tell the whole story. And if you're in Peter's perspective, it's not like, oh yeah, you cast the 2 dazes, then you lose to Tendrils. It's more like, wow, if I cast these 2 dazes, he only has 3 mana left, and maybe he can't cast Infernal Tutor.
Right.
And
it gives him the 1/1s as well. It's like
or Ad Nauseam or whatever the card is. So it's a lot harder to make those judgment calls. As it turned out, casting those dazes did up the storm count enough for Sam to win the game.
And Sam is ready to do battle. He has submitted his deck.
He's done sideboarding. He knows.
Yeah.
And you see that Peter did take out some amount of the Gurmag Anglers, which I think is good because you're not going to outrace Storm. You're really gonna you need to pressure them so they don't have forever, because games where they have forever, they'll eventually drop to 7 cards and they just cast all their spells. But you want cards like Pyromancer or Deathrite, or Delver, which provide pressure without costing a ton of mana, and which come out early and then let you use the rest of your mana for cards like Spell Pierce or Cabal Therapy. And as with last round, this is actually the last match outstanding.
Yeah, that was a particularly long game for sure. One of the cool things about playing out all of our matches on Magic Online is that the turnaround time is quite quick. There's no shuffling. You know, you do get a lot of the overhead of running a Magic tournament gets trimmed down, so it's pretty cool from a commentator and viewer perspective.
Yeah, the biggest downside, though, honestly, for running the event on Magic Online is the coverage account I got wasn't stocked with tickets, so I'm unable to join any drafts while we're doing commentary.
That's what you think the biggest downside is. All right.
Well, I challenge you to identify a bigger one.
Killer commentary. All right, we're ready for round number 3. It looks like Peter's taking a mulligan here. He's on 6.
He's taking a mulligan, and his hand is very, very good. So those are both just facts. He's got double Force of Will, Spell Pierce, and Daze.
Whoa.
So a lot of pressure. Also, because he played the fetch land and then didn't crack it to cast Ponder, my assumption is that he scryed to the top. He also didn't Spell Pierce this Duress. So
He did not.
He did not. So I think that Peter wants the card he's drawing. Plus, his hand is pretty redundant. Sam might actually take Ponder here because the other 4 are just straight up counter spells. But Sam knows that Peter scryed. So, if I'm Sam, I'm thinking that Peter's top card is something like a Delver of Secrets. So Sam's hand is very good. Both these players' hands, this is going to be a very competitive game because Sam has double Duress, so he's got Disruption to start with. He wishes he didn't draw Tendrils and Past in Flames, but he's got Dark Ritual, Lion's Eye Diamond, Infernal Tutor. Those 3 cards lead to the fastest kills in the deck. Because, again, you play Lion's Eye Diamond, you cast Dark Ritual, you cast Infernal Tutor. In response, while Infernal Tutor is still in the stack, you sacrifice Lion's Eye Diamond. Then you have 4 mana floating. Infernal Tutor resolves, then you can go get any card because you're Hellbent, and Infernal Tutor, when you're Hellbent, it lets you get any card. So
yeah,
Peter
you've got a bunch of mana, and now any card you want to get out of your library and start going.
So Sam did take the Ponder because that's the card that can improve Peter's hand the most. He also knows that Peter drew a land because Peter immediately drew and played a land. And Sam could Duress here, but he knows it's just going to get dazed or spell pierced, and he feels that there's no reason to play into the counters that make you pay mana get weaker over time as Sam draws more and more lands. And actually, Sam drew a basic island here, which is a very good draw in the face of that wasteland. So Sam's just going to wait on the Duress until he can pay for some amount of those cards.
There's a Surgical Extraction.
Surgical Extraction is an interesting one. So what it does is it lets Peter exile a card from Sam's graveyard.
There's a Cabal Therapy, by the way.
There is. And then exile all copies from Sam's hand or deck. So it's a tricky card to use, but it can definitely disrupt plans involving cards like Past in Flames.
Right. Which Sam has in his hand. But yeah, the Cabal Therapy, a really nice rip for Sam. He knows that there's 2 Force of Wills in hand for Peter. And he can devise a plan to try to
It's unlikely that Cabal Therapy is going to nab 2 Force of Wills just because Peter's unlikely to let it resolve. Mm-hmm. But it's definitely a threat. It's way more threatening than Duress. So Sam's going to lead with the Duress now. Peter can daze it, but Sam could just pay with the island. Peter could Spell Pierce it, and that forces Sam to sacrifice Lotus Petal. So you're essentially trading Spell Pierce for Lotus Petal, which is a reasonable trade. One Sam's willing to make for sure. I think this is going well for Sam. Again, we saw this last game where Peter doesn't have a clock.
Right, no clock to be spoken of. He's got a lot of disruption, but
the Tendrils deck is good at playing through disruption. Duress and Cabal Therapy go a long way, as well as the fact that the Storm mechanic, like Tendrils, doesn't care about counterspells all that much.
Peter just let Duress resolve as well.
So Sam's gonna have his pick here. I wouldn't be surprised if he just takes Spell Pierce and then tries to set up the Cabal Therapy on Force of Will.
Yeah.
He could take Surgical Extraction if he thinks that it's dangerous to allow Peter the ability to do something like nab your Past in Flames in response to Infernal Tutor or nab, Actually, with the way Sam's hand is, if he discards Tendrils to Lion's Eye Diamond with Infernal Tutor on the stack, Peter then gets to Surgical Extraction the Tendrils. And that's potentially very risky for Sam because he doesn't have an instant kill anymore. He might end up having to Infernal Tutor for Empty the Warrens, but then if Peter draws an Engineered Explosives, we're back in the space where Sam has a hard time closing out the game. So as
Sam has no backup plan, right?
Well, his backup plan is Empty the Warrens.
Is empty, but I'm talking about backup besides.
His backup plan.
He doesn't have like a random creature or a random creature land. There's just nothing else for him, right?
No, besides the one copy of Dragon Lord Silumgar, he's no, he's got a backup plan.
Blue-black control.
It's empty the warrens, and for that reason, Sam took the surgical extraction.
Well, nice draw here for black. He finds Ponder on top.
So Sam is, again, running out Ponder, offering it up as a Spell Pierce target, and it didn't happen. Now he's going to hit land drops. Now he can Cabal Therapy, but I like waiting a turn here, which is what he's going to do, because if you Cabal Therapy, Peter can go Spell Pierce it, you sack your Lotus Petal, then daze it, and then
Right.
Peter's left with 2 Force of Wills. Now if Sam gets to untap, and in fact he's drawn another land, if he just gets to cast Cabal Therapy now, he could take potentially both Force of Wills. Looks like he's going to wait and again try to assemble a turn where he wins the game in one turn.
Yeah, those cards are doing nothing in Peter's hand as it sits. Peter finally found a clock, but it's starting to feel like it was just too late here. He found a Delver of Secrets.
Well, Delver does force Sam's hand a little bit. He can't wait forever.
But he can wait like a long time, right?
He can wait a number of turns. One thing that makes Delver a little riskier too is Delver plus fetch lands like Scalding Tarn and Misty Rainforest give you a bit of a card filtering effect, because at the beginning of Peter's upkeep, he gets to look at his top card, and then if he doesn't like it, he can sacrifice the fetch land to not draw it. So because of that, Peter's next draw is going to be slightly better than average. He gets an extra shot, basically, like a scry.
Sam's going for the Cabal Therapy here, Luis.
So yeah, Sam wants to try to end this game before that effect starts coming into play. So Peter can't let this resolve. He knows what's going to happen if he lets this resolve.
Right.
Both of his Force Wills leave. So I think his best option is to force pitching his weakest card, which is Daze,
Which is what he did.
leaving him another copy of Force of Will. And now Sam is actually in a slightly tough spot because Peter's at 18. There have been 3 spells cast so far.
Yep.
And so Sam can go Ritual, Lion's Eye Diamond. What Sam can actually do here is he can Ritual and then cast Infernal Tutor, and if Peter doesn't counter it, just get another Lion's Eye Diamond, because Sam is not. If he sacrifices Lion's Eye Diamond in response to Infernal Tutor, it can just get countered. Though Sam has Past in Flames, and Past in Flames has Flashback. So
Right.
let's see, 3, 4, 5. Assuming Dark Ritual resolves, because I do not believe Peter would counter it. That's 7 mana. If you Infernal Tutor, if you play Lion's Eye Diamond, cast Infernal Tutor, sack Lion's Eye Diamond, you have 5 mana plus 3 from Diamond is 8 mana. And then Peter has to counter Infernal Tutor, or doesn't, either way. And then, let's say he counters it. You then get to Flashback Past in Flames, going down to 3 mana. Flashback Dark Ritual, going up to 5 mana. Tendrils, and that's presumably more than lethal. Yeah. If Peter doesn't counter Infernal Tutor, you can just get a Duress or a Cabal Therapy, and then cast that card. And, well, the problem with that is Peter just lets it resolve and then has Spell Pierce up. No, you can just take the Spell Pierce, because then Peter won't be able to cast
Then
Force of Will.
Will's
So
dead, yeah.
you duress the Spell Pierce and then Flashback Past in Flames and then go through the whole Tendrils
do
win.
the
So
whole thing.
I think Sam has a win through Force of Will here, but it's complicated.
Yeah.
We're going to need to see how this plays
It's
out.
awesome to hear you break this down. I mean, you just don't get this level of depth, when you watch somebody play Magic, and hearing you break down 2 distinct lines of play
Well,
it's fascinating.
Storm is just one of my favorite decks to play.
Yeah,
I
no, I know.
played tons of Storm.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. He immediately transformed the Delver. You can see now
So
it's a 3/2 flying.
Sam ended up passing the turn. Ponder got revealed, and unsurprisingly, Peter decided not to shuffle away the Ponder, since it's just better than the average card.
For sure.
So now
especially
Peter's
with the
really
first
looking
lands.
for something like Cabal Therapy. Because he can't be feeling good about how much disruption he has. He's got a Force of Will and a Spell Pierce, but Sam has a deck that's very adept at playing around those cards. So let's see what Peter ends up hitting off this Ponder here.
Found a Brainstorm.
So Brainstorm's interesting too, and one reason not to cast it right away is if Sam casts a hand disruption card, you just let it resolve, he takes a counter, but then you can potentially Brainstorm into another counter. So I think Sam has a lot of the same lines available to him. He's less of a Storm count than before, but Past in Flames into replaying Dark Ritual, into replaying Tendrils or other copies of Duress is so much mana, or so many spells, that I think that it still ends up working out fairly well. So Sam now has 5 mana from his lands, 2 from the Lotus Petals is 7. He's got Dark Ritual. Looks like he's just going to start by casting Infernal Tutor, which if Peter lets resolve, so Infernal Tutor, all it can do when you have cards in hand is let you reveal a card from your hand and get another copy of it. So it's resolving. Sam's going to get a second Lion's Eye Diamond here, and I think this is still going to work out.
Okay.
Because Lion's Eye Diamond with Past in Flames is a really powerful combination.
No, Sam's just going to pass the turn back.
So maybe he's not confident about having enough spells to get through Force of Will here.
Here's another Delver of Secrets now.
So Sam can also
Peter.
do something like he's got enough mana now that he can go, especially with the second Ritual. If he goes Ritual, Lion's Eye Diamond, he can just cast Past in Flames. Peter can counter it. Then he flashes Past in Flames back. He's also pretty close. He's going to be able to Tendrils. If he wanted to, he could Tendrils for 6 here, but I don't think he needs to even Tendrils before the Past in Flames. I think just casting the Past in Flames to start things out is already enough. Sam's got so much mana.
Wow, he's just going to hard cast Past in Flames here, huh? I like this.
Yeah, hardcast Past in Flames. And if this resolves, it gives all the cards in all the instants and sorceries in Sam's graveyard flashback, which means Sam gets to go Duress, Ritual, Tendrils for way more than lethal.
Right.
If this gets countered, which Peter presumably has to, Sam can then flash it back by paying 4 in a red and then do the same thing.
Right, and even though the Tendrils in his hand ends up in the graveyard, it will have flashback, right? So it all works out.
Yeah, basically Tendrils is going to be lethal when it goes in the stack, so spending 4 mana on it, I don't think you need to do that. It also protects you from something like a Surgical Extraction.
So Sam's going to win.
That is my assumption at this point. Given the spells that Sam has available and what Peter has. What Peter does have, though, is a Brainstorm. That's the biggest amount of unknown information.
I see.
So
what kind of things can he look for to help disrupt? I mean, he's got a Force of Will and a Spell Pierce in his hand. He needs more of the same?
He's got a second Surgical Extraction,
Okay.
which I don't think quite gets there again because Sam has left the Tendrils in his hand. Peter could potentially Brainstorm into another counter spell, but he doesn't have a lot more counter spells available that he can cast because Force of Will costs a blue card. And you remember, Brainstorm is an incredibly powerful card, but it doesn't actually up the number of cards in your hand.
Right.
After it resolves, Peter will still have 3 cards, so he's not going to be able to double Force of Will. If he had more blue mana, he could Brainstorm into Vendilion Click and put the Tendrils on the bottom, which would be pretty funny. Though Sam does have an Infernal Tutor in his graveyard, so I guess that wouldn't necessarily work.
Right.
And Sam
Peter's in the tank here.
he's got to decide whether he wants to counter this now. The thing is, he knows it's going to get flashed back. Let's see. There's no way to counter it and then Surgical Extraction it before it gets flashed back unless Sam does something like crack a Polluted Delta and put a card on the stack.
Right.
So if Sam can avoid doing that, Peter doesn't have a window because he counters a spell. It's in the graveyard. Let's say, because here I'm assuming he Brainstorms into Surgical Extraction. Sam then just immediately casts it for its flashback cost, and there's no window there to Surgical Extract and exile it.
He just won't have the priority at any point.
So Peter is going to Force of Will, leaving Brainstorm in his hand. His other option was to leave Spell Pierce in hand, but again, Sam has so much mana here that it's just not necessary. So Sam could Tendrils for 7 here, but that's not lethal. And again, I think just casting Past in Flames should lead to a win here.
Mm-hmm. Sam's got 2 black mana floating. You can see in the lower left side, right down here. He's got access to red mana from the Lotus Petals or the Lion's Eye Diamonds.
And the chat was also asking about another piece of technology Sam uses, which is he has his water bottle in his backpack.
Yeah.
And at every tournament, you see him just holding his backpack up and drinking from his water bottle.
I've seen him do that.
Look, Sam Black is a rogue deck builder. So Sam did crack Polluted Delta here, so
Ooh.
Peter's letting it resolve. Peter had an opportunity there to, in response, Brainstorm, find Surgical Extraction.
There's another Polluted Delta. Yeah, he doesn't see that, though.
And Peter does not have a Flusterstorm, because Flusterstorm would be the other card that could counter Past in Flames here.
And we're going to see Past in Flames flash back now.
And it resolves. So now now Sam has access to tons of mana. Also, the Lion's Eye Diamonds.
Yeah, put on your seatbelt, kids. Here, this is where things get kind of gross. You can
Yeah.
see all these spells
rituals flying out of.
jumping out
So
of the
Peter
graveyard.
just F6 now. He was just
He's just done.
Yeah. So now Storm count is already at 10 for Tendrils, so that's more than enough. Sam can run up the count if he wants, but
There is no reason.
Peter's no
Yep.
cards in hand.
And that's going to do it. So Sam Black is going to be able to find the victory with his Tendrils of Agony Storm deck here. The Ad Nauseam Tendrils deck gets the job done, and he defeats Peter here.
Yeah, Sam put 10 drills on the
3
stack,
games.
and that will do it.
Yeah, 10. Okay, well, it looks like that's going to do it here for round 2 from the Magic Online Championship.